Every Easter Sunday I light a candle for Jamison. Yeah, Easter Sunday will never be the same for me ever again. You know, all these years later, I still remember every single detail about that day. Sometimes it still haunts me. I think that's because they said there was no reason. Just bad luck, they said. I remember the hospital was really quiet because of the public holiday. They wheeled me up to the radiography department. And I sat there for 30 minutes because I had to wait for the radiographer to be called in for an Easter party. He was on call. And he was clearly not happy by the time he got there. There's no, hi, how are you? There was no happy Easter. No, there was nothing. He just laid me down on the bed and he put the ultrasound probe on my belly. And then after 2 to 3 minutes, he just looked at the nurse and in a matter-of-fact way, he said, no heartbeat. No heartbeat? What do you mean, no heartbeat? It didn't really sink in until a nurse came up and hugged me and said how sorry she was that my baby had died. And it was at that moment, it felt like someone hit me over the head with a hammer. It was an indescribable pain, physically and emotionally. My baby had died. I woke up in the hospital room. It was a large room, there's just a few people there. The sun was streaming through the window and I could see my doctor sitting in a rocking chair looking out over the city. And they brought my little baby into me. And I nursed him for 2 whole hours, stroking his beautiful face and holding his tiny hands. He was perfect. He was beautiful. And he was so still. And you know, for that whole 2 hours, it was like the room had been lifted into a completely different dimension because no one said a word. It was absolute silence. And I treasured the only 2 hours I'd ever have to hold my baby. And then everyone got up to leave. And just before they did, this lady called Deb, she came over and she looked at me. And then she looked at Jamison and she looked back at me and she said, you know, I think he's an old soul. He didn't need to do this life again. He's just passing through. He didn't need to do this shit again. And I remember thinking, what do you mean? What do you mean he didn't need to do this shit again? My baby's died. And I could feel the anger surging up over the mountains of grief inside me. And then they all left. And I was alone. The nurse came in. She picked up Jamison and she put him back in his crib and said I needed some sleep. So I lay down and I pulled the sheet up over my head and I prayed. I prayed so hard for a miracle. And I couldn't sleep because all I could hear was the babies crying down the hall. And all I wanted was to hear my baby cry just once. Just once. But he didn't cry. Of course, he couldn't cry. But you know, even though it still hurts, it hurts real bad. I now look back and I know that Deb was right. He didn't need to do this shit again. He was passing through just to teach me a lesson. And I've learned so much from him. More than words can describe. And I'm so blessed to have that little guardian angel looking down upon me. I really am so blessed. Happy Easter.